Since leaving my stable, for the first time, I'd felt like my life has become one great struggle against enemies, mysteries, simply my friends' unhappiness. It was always a contest about when the dealer would finally deal me my last hand, when the wasteland would break me in two. I'd tried. It succeeded in 99. It'd come pretty close a few times other, within the push of a safety toggle, but I always got dragged back. Of course, I could have just let go and allowed myself to die, even then. But I couldn't, really. I knew that I had to atone, that I hadn't yet. I still had hope that somehow I had something else to give, some comfort, some peace. Anything to draw a bit more of the wasteland's attention to me, so that it would leave some innocent alone for a little bit longer. And I wasn't broken yet. The Celestia, or part of it, had fallen atop me with a grinding metallic scream punctuated by thumps, groans, and booms. The impact pushed me down deeper and deeper into the cold depths, squeezing me as my injuries burned in the salty water. My braces were now weights taped to the ends of my limbs. My tattered barding pulled me down. This was probably where I was going to die. But not yet. Swimming wasn't really part of my skill set, and right now, as the water rushed around me, I didn't even know which way was up. For all I knew, I was flailing deeper and deeper into the water. I just knew that I floated in the bathtub, and so hopefully the direction that I was going was the right one. Then I smashed into armored hull. The metal vibrated with terrible force. I could feel the strain humming through the plates as the Celestia tore herself to pieces. I could hear distant explosions. My lungs burned as I felt my way along the surface. Up, a primitive intact screamed at me. Breathe. Bubbles started to leak out of my nose as I crawled like a bug. A little longer. Then my head broke through to a pocket of air, and I gasped as the groans and screams of metal were mixed in with those of ponies. I felt sorry for that. I knew there had been acolytes and other initiates who hadn't deserved to die down here with me. One thing was for certain, though. Steel Rain would never get the Celestia to fire another shot. If he'd managed to, I didn't see anything stopping him from firing 200 more. But still, I hadn't wanted them all to die this way. I had no way to tell what I was in or where. Suddenly, a pony surfaced beside me, screaming hysterically as she gasped for air as well. Her flailing hooves grabbed me and shoved me beneath the water again, wildly kicking hooves smacking into my head, and I nearly lost my precious lungful of air. I could have gone back up, fodder for the ever-precious bit of oxygen left in that space, but I let her have it. Good luck. I scuttled along the overturned ship, hearing the swooshing water racing in somewhere. I'd probably put one hell of a hole in the bottom of this thing. I came across a pocket of air no deeper than my muzzle, but it held just long enough for me to cough and sputter as I tried to get one or two more breaths. Just a little longer. Just a little longer. There was one last detonation, and the plates above me jerked and hammered into my head. Now I was pushed against the wreck as I started moving in the direction opposite of floating. I suddenly had an image of the upside-down ship slamming into the seabed and squishing me into paint. I wiggled and kicked and struggled as I tried to find any direction that was away. Then I felt myself thrust into a slimy morass that oozed into my every nook and cranny as the ship gave a final tired groan. The sludge was being squished inside like a radroach, and I was squirted out into water. My legs worked slowly, trying for some progress, but I felt the silt swirling around me. My mouth worked slowly. I had to breathe. I had to. Bubbles slipped, and I felt my rear legs sink down into the stinking gunk. My rump touched down, and I sat there, a burning sensation roaring inside my lungs, and then coolness spreading through my chest. This wasn't so bad. Disemboweling was worse. I felt as if I were drifting away. You win, you bony son of a bitch. Now, let me rest. I'm so tired. It'd been a while since I'd had a nice long nap. I yawned and stretched, then blinked and blinked again as I looked at the interior of a glassy egg. I gaped at the end of the weird little pod I occupied, opening one eye and closing it, opening the other and closing it. I winked a few times just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Yes! I cheered, and I pumped a hoof. A white, smooth hoof that neither flopped about nor bulged with growths. And no pip-buck. I was alive, whole, complete, and intact for the first time in weeks, feeling healthy and alive. How long since I'd felt this kind of energy? I saw a little red button on the wall that read release, and hit it. I had to wonder what kind of miracle was responsible for my... The door swung open into the striped-out remains of Vanity's bedroom. The bed was a filthy mat, and the desk had been pushed against the doors. I was in an egg-shaped pod similar to the ones in the Fluttershy clinic. A little jury-rigged magical generator puttered and hummed beside it. What was I doing here? I looked around in astonished worry. Where were my friends? What had happened? A corpse moved on the bed. No, not a corpse, but a pony very near becoming one. Dark hide was covered head to hoof in scars. His cutie marks had been deliberately torn away. Trick Pony had been branded in their place. Slowly he crawled out. Goddesses, he was skinny. So very skinny. P21? He flinched away, then shook his head. A filthy mane, so dirty I couldn't even tell what color it was pushed back from faded golden eyes. A bloody stump of a horn marred his brow. He looked at me as if he were staring at a ghost, and then his lips curled in the smallest of smiles. Priest? The wasted stallion just nodded once. I approached him, and he backed away almost fearfully. What happened? Where are my friends? I shuddered, walking slowly to a blasted-out window, and pointed down the road. Pointed towards chapel. An unwholesome hum filled the air, a single note that went on and on. But he shook his head, and then opened his mouth wide. Nothing remained of his tongue. He gave an apologetic little shrug. How long? I murmured in shock. Slowly his hoof rose and fell as he tapped out 15 steps. 15 weeks? He shook his head. Months. Again. Years? At that, he nodded. 15 years? I staggered, but tried to focus as I stared at the swaying buck. But why am I here? What happened? Where am I? He lay down on the ground, one golden eye looking up at me. His lips moved silently, then he closed them. He took one breath and let it out forever. No. This was wrong. This was very, very wrong. I needed guns, Barding, and my friends beside me now. I shoved the desk away and threw open the doors. Hoofington had risen. The rest of Blue Blood Manor was a leveled ruin. Only a thin ramp of debris in the corner remained. I looked out directly at the core. The clouds were gone, but so was the sky beyond. From horizon to horizon, a solid wall of baleful green illuminated the skies in an oppressive monochrome. The core was awash in green light, the center of the green nimbus that spread over everything. Shadowbolt Tower rose like a dagger pointed to the heavens, and the land around the island was lit with thousands of fires. That droning buzz rolled on and on, as if the city itself hummed. I kicked my way down the debris and raced along the cracked ground towards chapel. Where else could I go? I passed the first empty and wretched camps, then a few earth ponies, then a few with earth ponies and pegasi and unicorns. Then there were zebras, griffins, sand dogs, all together around the gutted fires. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply hummed that single resonant note or sat silently staring at nothing. At least they weren't killing each other. The graveyard had been torn up. It looked like some pony had tried to plant crops, but they were strange and bloated things. Chapel sat empty and half-finished, its defenses long ago shattered. I peeked into one building after the next, but only emptiness and that droning sound filled them. Finally, I approached the shell of the chapel itself. Hoofington Rises had been spray-painted over every available inch. Slowly, I stepped to the door, and was hit by a palpable wall of stench. Yet, though I hesitated, I took another step in, and another. I'd found where every pony had gone. From the heaps of tiny bodies emerged a larger one. A withered, yellow filly's severed head was kicked past me as she worked herself free. Bits of gore cascaded off as her tiny pink pinprick eyes focused upon me. It was hard to tell what were stripes and what was dried blood and dangling viscera. Her lips curled wider and wider as her hooves hugged a tiny dead infant, one with red stripes, one of a dozen lying around her like so many shattered dolls. And then Rampage spoke. "Shh, baby's finally finished crying, but she's sleeping nice and peaceful now." I backed away. I wanted to scream. Everything was screaming as Rampage laughed. "Come back. I'll help you sleep too." I turned and fled, not towards the city, but to the last refuge I knew, the only refuge I had anymore. I ran past the reeking camps, up the hill towards Star House. To my immense relief, it seemed intact. That horrible message had been spray-painted on every inch, but there was a mare stepping out, an olive mare with green eyes and a blue mane. "Scotch?" I shouted happily as I raced up towards her, but she turned and looked at me in shock and fear. I saw her pregnant, distended belly as she stared at me like I were a ghost. Then slowly, in place of a cutie mark, I saw slashed scars, and the word breeder carved into a rump. There were 9 marks under that volition, 3 pink and 6 blue. "Blackjack?" She murmured softly. "You're awake. Finally awake?" "Scotch, what happened? What happened to everything?" I asked as I sat down hard. She sat down slowly, rocking back and forth. "You died. Or nearly died. The sea ponies fished you out of the water. Lacuna and Glory got you breathing again." Her eyes darted left and right. "Glory, she swore she'd save you. She did. She gave EC-1101 to Sanguine, and he made you a new body. But he said it would take years for you to mature. So we were just going to have to wait. And we did." And she started to shake and sob. And everything went bad.